Hello guys, and welcome to another one of our Lorcana videos. Today we are bringing you the highly anticipated Amber Amethyst Rush deck. This is a very, very powerful aggro deck in Lorcana. This is one of the decks that everybody's been really speculating is going to be probably the strongest deck in the game. I'm not quite sure it holds that title, but it is definitely one of the strongest. This is definitely a tier 1 or tier 1.5 deck for sure. So we'll just go ahead and get right into it. This is an aggro deck, but if you come from other trading card games, this is going to look slightly different to what aggro you're used to. Aggro in most card games is pretty much defined by the fact that it doesn't really interact with your opponent, just kind of plays its own game plan, and it tries to end the game as soon as possible. Any interaction that it does with your opponent is typically going to be direct damage to their face in most card games. In Lorcana, we don't have that. You don't deal damage to your opponent, you gain points for yourself. So this deck is all about gaining a bunch of lore as fast as possible and protecting your pieces on the board. A lot of these guys do not have great stats, but they quest for a lot, and that is key. We're going to quest for more than our opponents can deal with as soon as the game even starts, right? One of the really cool things about Lorcana, about this deck specifically, is that there's very few scenarios where if you play a card, it is untapped and your opponent cannot attack it until it quests. So they cannot kill it until it already quests. We're going to really be taking advantage of that in this deck. There's a couple strategies that can kind of punish this deck, but if you are playing your matchups correctly or finding your sideboard pieces or just not finding the hard matchups, this deck is almost unbeatable. Because of the nature of this deck, we're going to go through the mana curve. So we're going to go through this a little step differently than we have with all of our other deck lists. Instead of going in like categories, we're just going to go in mana order. And kicking it off, we've got our 1 mana Stitch. This guy is just a 1 mana 2/2 that quests for 1. He's a decent body, but his name is why we're playing him. We are playing the Rockstar Stitch, that is the lifeblood of this deck, and we want to be able to shift it up as soon as possible. So playing this Stitch, not necessarily turn 1, because we do have some better turn 1 plays, but before turn 4, very important. We do want to get this guy down on the board so we can shift our Rockstar Stitch down as early as possible. Next up, we've got our 1 mana Malificent. This, we are still missing some cards for this deck, and so we do have some proxies printed up here, and our printer was a little light on ink. We've been printing a lot of Lorcana cards. We're very, very excited about this game. We hope you guys are too. But we've got 1 mana Maleficent here and her twin 1 mana Lilo. These are both 1 mana 1/1s that quest for 2. They cannot be inked, which is a little rough, but there's not many cards in this deck that can't be inked, and since these are coming out on turn 1 almost always, you're going to be hard mulliganing for these cards and one more card that we'll see in a minute. These cards are very, very, very powerful. If you can keep these alive for 2 or 3 turns, you will almost certainly win the game. With the mid game that this deck plays, these guys coming out in the early game is incredibly important. If you are not hitting these on turn 1, you are almost certainly losing the game. But if you're hitting these on turn 1 and protecting them for a couple turns, this deck is almost unbeatable. This deck is very, very, very strong at doing what it wants to do and doing so efficiently. All right, next up, we've got Pascal here. So Pascal is a 1 mana 1/1 that only quests for 1, but as long as you control another character, he gains Evasive. Evasive is a very powerful keyword, very powerful defensive keyword. That means unless your opponent has Evasive, they cannot attack into it. Which means that as long as you've got at least one other guy on the board, Pascal is very hard to get rid of. And next up, we've got the Protector. We've got Simba the Cub. Simba is incredibly strong, especially following up our Lilo and our Maleficent. This is the other card that you want to be mulliganing for. The Stitch and the Pascal are good to come out in the mid game. Lilo and Maleficent you want on turn 1 every game if you can. Simba turn 2 every game if you can. Simba has the Bodyguard effect, which means that while he is exhausted, while he is tapped, your opponents cannot attack your other cards. They must attack him first. This curves perfectly with our Lilo and our Maleficent. Play them on turn 1, quest them for 2, play Simba out, and because he has Bodyguard, he can come out already exhausted. There is almost no card in the game outside of very, very specific steel cards that can beat this on turn 2. Especially if you're going first and they only have 1 or 2 mana, it's almost impossible for them to beat this. You're going to be able to quest with Lilo or Maleficent at least 1 more time, maybe even more, depending on what your next couple draws are going to be, depending on how their draws go to be able to beat Simba. There's no 1 mana card in the game that can kill Simba on their attack. So if you go first, play your mana, play your Lilo. They go first, play a 1 mana card, doesn't really matter. You play your other thing, you play your other mana, quest with Lilo, play Simba out. Whatever they have to attack with cannot kill Simba by itself. There's some 2-card combos that can beat Simba with a card that they have, but there is no card in the game at 1 mana that can kill Simba. And all of the ones that can attack Simba, Simba will kill back. Simba is incredibly powerful at on turn 2 specifically, protecting your Lilo and your Maleficent. This is the main game plan of the deck. I cannot stress this enough. Games where you play one of these on turn 1 and this on turn 2 are your games where you are almost unbeatable. Yeah, it is a very, very, very powerful effect. incredible synergy. Next up, we've got our other 2-mana play, Dr. Faciller. Sometimes we do need to play a little bit of board control, and Faciller is very good at that. He is also a 2-mana card, which I like for our Rockstar Stitch. If you're not familiar with that card, we'll go over that in a minute. Just keep an eye on all the 1 and 2-mana cards in this deck. It will come up later. Speaking of incredibly impactful 2-mana cards, we've got the Magic Brooms, and that means we are going to be seeing Wizard Mickey in here. So the Brooms is a 2-mana 2/2 that quests for 1, and when you play this character, you may shuffle a card from your discard back into your deck. This is typically going to be used on some of our 1-mana plays, our Stitches, our top end, and our friends on the other side. We're a purple deck, you know we're playing that card. Next up, we've got Lefu. He is our 2-mana 1/2 that quests for 2. He has an effect. It's only if you control Gastons. There's no other Gastons in this deck. I just need another 2-mana card that quests for 2. Another 2-mana card to fulfill our Rockstar Stitch, and something else that quests for 2 just to really put the pressure on our opponent. This is kind of our backup turn 2 if we don't find our Simba, because if they kill one of our questers for 2, we can just play another one, and that's not bad. Next up, we've got Be Our Guest. This is going to help us find our shift cards on our turn 2. We typically want to be singing this either with our Simba on our turn 3 or with one of our other cards that we played on turn 2. We don't really want to pay mana for this because we really want to be playing a bunch of characters as often as possible. Simba is the perfect singer for this because you just want to get him tapped so that his bodyguard is still in effect, and Be Our Guest lets you find more cards. Lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and add any one character you find there into your hand. Next up, we've got 3 Lanterns. I was playing this deck at 4 Lanterns, but it felt like it didn't really need it, especially since our turn 2, we typically want to be playing Simba. This can help us get our shift cards out a little faster than normal, though typically we are going to be playing this on turn 3, maybe after we've sung a Be Our Guest. And since we really only need 1 Lantern, 2 and 3 Lanterns we don't really need. We're not playing that many cards that really need the mana discount. Only having 3 here is fine. We want to see 1 Lantern. We're okay with seeing 2. We do not want to see 3, especially since we can't ink it, so we don't want to be playing 4. That's a sweet spot for 3 copies in my opinion. Now onto our 3-drops, we've got our 3-mana Malificent. This Maleficent, when you play her, you draw a card. Just replaces herself, just gets another body on board. She is 3 mana, but that card draw is very valuable. And following up with our 3-drops, we got our 3-mana Dr. Faciller. He's a 3-mana 2/4 that quests for 1, though he's primarily here just for our next card, Friends on the Other Side. He says whenever you play a song, you can look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. This helps us get some filtering before we look for our top 4 for Be Our Guest, especially if we're digging for certain cards, as well as he sings Friends on the Other Side like no other. He is 3 mana, so if we play this on our turn 3, say we sing Be Our Guest with our Simba, find our Faciller, play our Faciller, next turn, Faciller sings Friends on the Other Side, look at the top 2, put one of the cards that we want on the top of the deck, put the other one on the bottom, then draw our 2 cards. Perfect combo right there. Jumping up to our 4 mana, we've got Mickey Mouse comboing with our Brooms, just trying to get as many of these in rotation as possible, trying to combo these together. This is kind of our mid-range game plan if we need to fall back on it, and the Brooms fulfill another service in that of Rockstar Stitch. So Rockstar Stitch is a 6 mana card, which is a lot, but he's got Shift 4, which is why we're going to be playing this Stitch on turn 3, hopefully. One of these on turn 1, him on turn 2, sing Be Our Guest. Options on turn 3, if we play him and we follow up with one of these 2-drops, very nice, so that we can shift onto him with Stitch on turn 4. Stitch is a 6 mana, but hopefully we're always shifting him for 4, so I'm going to call him a 4 mana 3/5. A 4 mana 3/5 that quests for 3, and whenever you play another character with cost 2 or less, you may have them enter tapped in order to draw a card. This works incredibly well with more Simbas that we find because they're already going to enter tap. We want them tapped because of the bodyguard effect, and now we're just going to be continually drawing cards and continually refilling our hand just so we can get as many guys on board as possible. Then our backup game plan is Dr. Faciller, the 7 mana Dr. Faciller. He is our shift 5. We definitely want to be shifting him on top of either our 2 mana Faciller or our 3 mana Faciller, just because getting to 7 mana in this deck is quite difficult. You're really not inking many cards past you get to the 4 mana point. You're really not inking more cards. You're just trying to play every single card you have in your hand, really put the pressure on your opponent. He is another one of our cards that quests for 3, rounding out our top end quite nice. And he says whenever one of your other characters is banished in a challenge, you may return them back to your hand. This keeps our 1 manas in rotation the entire game. We just quest with the Maleficent. If they kill it, play it back down, quest with it next turn. They kill it, play it back down, quest with it next turn. It just gets out of hand. And he's questing for 3 the entire time. They have to kill him or they lose the game. They have to kill them or they lose the game. They kill this, it comes back to your hand. They kill this, you quest with these again. This deck is very efficient at what it does. As you can see, we're not playing many different cards. It's a lot of 4-ofs here and a couple 3-ofs, just to try and make the math work a little better. But this deck is incredibly powerful. This deck is incredibly efficient at what it does. If you can get your God draw of Maleficent turn 1, Simba turn 2, you've almost certainly won the game. If you are unable to find these cards in the early game, you've certainly lost the game. This is a deck that is definitely taking advantage of the partial mulligan that Lorcana has right now. You need to find Maleficent and Lilo in your turn 1. If you do, you're cooking. If not, you're really sad. But the partial mulligan rule is very powerful at getting specific cards into your hand. You basically can, if you really need to, you can look at the top 14 cards of your deck. And with 8 copies here, you should almost always be finding at least one of them in your top 14. You have to be very, very unlucky in order to not see that. And in that case, you're probably finding your Stitch or your Pascal, which is not the end of the world, though it's not ideal. If you like playing aggro, though this doesn't feel like an aggro deck in compared to other trading card games. You're not really attacking your opponent, you're just kind of doing your own thing. It plays very similar to combo decks from other card games. Even though this is Lorcana's version of an aggro deck, it does not play like it. So if you don't like aggro from other formats, but you like playing very fast, very low to the ground game plan, this is the one for you. And even if you do like aggro from other trading card games, this is still a similar enough playstyle that I think you'll still get a lot out of it. This deck is, like I've been saying, speculated to be one of the best decks in the game, at least for set 1. Maybe we'll get some more tools in set 2 to buff this deck. Maybe we'll get some tools in set 2 to nerf this deck. But this deck is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly efficient. It's incredibly easy to play as well. This is a very, very, very powerful and very good beginner deck. And it's not incredibly expensive. Really, these Mickey Mouses, this Rockstar Stitch, this Faciller, the Lanterns are a couple bucks. These guys are a little pricey, admittedly. At least right now, we're recording this before September 1st, when the big price drop we're expecting to happens. These guys are each sitting about $8 right now, which is a lot for some 1-drops that you need functionally 8 copies of. If you wait until after the prices drop, this deck will almost certainly be pennies. A lot of this deck comes out of the starter decks that are already available right now, and none of these are incredibly high rarity, right? There is no legendaries in here. There's only 1 super rare and a smattering of rares, lots of commons, lots of uncommons in this deck. This deck is very, very cheap. This deck is very, very powerful. Definitely recommend picking up this deck if you are excited about Lorcana and want a very easy to play, beginner-friendly deck. Very, very powerful deck. All right, that was our Stitch aggro deck. If you are as excited about Disney's Lorcana as we are, we've got plenty of videos coming your way. We've got more deck videos, we've got more gameplay, we've got some locals gameplay. If you are living in Tucson, Arizona and want to swing by the shop, check the description for our address. We're playing local Lorcana tournaments every Sunday and every Wednesday. So check out those. We'd love to have you here. We've got our gift promo events running for the Disney Lorcana Play events. You can earn lots of cool prizes, lots of cool pins. I know there's collectors out there are probably gonna be looking at these. They're very, very cool pins. I'm not even a pin collector and I kind of want these, I'm not gonna lie. If you like this video and you wanna see more of it, we've got a bunch of deck lists, gameplay, locals gameplay. We're recording some of our locals tournaments that we're having here in Tucson. If you wanna swing by, please feel free to. We've got a very welcoming community. We've got more theory videos. We've got some more box openings. We've got some tier lists. Keep an eye out for those. I know those are very fun. I'm very excited for those to hit the interwebs. This is Lorcana release week, so we've got plenty of Lorcana videos coming your way throughout the entire next few weeks. We're really excited about this game, and we hope that you guys are too. If you're excited for more Lorcana videos, just like we're excited to give them to you, keep your eyes here on the channel, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.